Hello, I'm Bishop Craig Bergland, coming to you today to speak with you about what no doubt is on the minds of most of the world at this moment. Over the last few days, we've seen an earthquake, a tsunami, and now we stand potentially on the brink of nuclear disaster in Japan. I was impressed as I watched the news coverage on CNN last night that the overriding concern that the reporter said had been expressed to him by the Japanese people was, why did this happen to us? What did we do? It's a very understandable reaction. Many of our religious belief systems, particularly in the three Abrahamic faiths, the traditions of the book, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, can lead us, if not fully understood, to the belief that disasters, tragedies, even the random acts of the criminally insane are somehow things that we draw upon ourselves. In Buddhist countries, the belief can be that we have generated collective karma that causes these sorts of things to happen. I certainly don't want to disparage anyone's beliefs, but I want to offer an alternative to the belief that somehow it is our misdeeds, individual or collective, that cause things like earthquakes and tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, even random acts of terrorism, domestically or abroad. As far as the events of the world go, the natural order, if you will, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, flooding, what I'll call, for lack of a better word, weather events, although I recognize that an earthquake is not a weather event. The truth is that as we understand our world, there are pressures that build. In the case of an earthquake, there are pressures that build along tectonic plates, and when the pressures reach a certain point, the plates shift one over the other to ease the pressure. It's the way our planet works. We can look at it differently. We can choose to adopt some kind of a supernatural explanation for it. But I'm not convinced, in fact I'm willing to say, that a supernatural explanation that is disproven by a scientific explanation needs to be yielded to that scientific explanation. And so the answer to the people of Japan who are asking, what did we do to cause this? The answer is nothing. If folks really needed an answer, it would be that you live in a place that's prone to earthquakes. But you didn't necessarily choose to be born there, and you certainly have the right to live there. Those, I imagine, who it bothers enough eventually relocate. But there was no collective evil or collective misdeed, or even, I dare say, a karmic-like cause for this event. What caused this event was the way our planet works. And it's tragic. And it seems so random. And it's certainly unfortunate. And my heart and my thoughts and my prayers certainly go out to the people of Japan and to people throughout the world who have friends and relatives that are in Japan now, unaccounted for, or suffering without adequate food, clothing, shelter, water. Japan right now, like North America and Europe, is in the midst of winter, moving to spring, but temperatures are dipping in the evenings below freezing. The second issue, regarding the nuclear difficulty at this point, the flooding of now 2 reactors with seawater in an attempt to cool them to avoid meltdown. The partial meltdown that responsible authorities are suggesting may have started, and the possibility of total meltdown, which raises the specter of a Chernobyl-like release of radioactivity, a specter that, from what I'm able to ascertain with my limited scientific knowledge, is not reasonable. These plants are designed differently than Chernobyl was, primarily in that they feature containment buildings. Human nature being what it is, people will no doubt seek to place blame. And yet, the Japanese have one of the most outstanding records and policies of vigilance regarding nuclear power. This potential meltdown exists because of an unimagined combination of events. It wasn't the earthquake that caused the reactors to begin to fail to cool. It was the tsunami. Yes, power's been lost to the plants, but the floodwaters took out the backup systems, the generators. And they're trying to operate cooling on battery power, but the batteries are running low. If we imagine for a moment a worst-case scenario, massive releases of radiation, it will still be no one's fault. It will still be the truth that people acted in good faith with the best information available to them at the time. They didn't anticipate the worst earthquake in Japanese history, followed by a tsunami. Nobody did. It is perhaps a natural consequence of living in a world that uses nuclear power, and I make no judgment for or against nuclear power, that the possibility of a disaster is always present. The same could be said, however, for mining coal and mine explosions and collapses, for refining petroleum, and as we're seeing also in Japan, petroleum storage tanks exploding and burning. As long as we deal with fuel, we're going to deal with the possibility of disaster on some scale. Certainly, this situation reminds us of our need to continue to invest in alternative fuel technologies, alternative energy sources, regardless of the activity of the petroleum lobbies or any other lobbies. The truth is, we need a safer and cleaner world. But that need and that truth and that knowledge in no way implicates the Japanese in any way, shape, or form. I cannot imagine the horror of being a citizen of a country that has endured the dropping of 2 nuclear bombs on its population near the end of World War II by my country, the United States of America. I cannot imagine the horror of that experience or the horror of looking at the possibility of it happening again, even though it's a distant possibility, and knowing that if it happens again, it happens at your own hands. My heart goes out to the Japanese people. What's more, the images coming back from Japan of the damage of the tsunami in the northern part of the country are horrific. Piles of rubble where cities used to stand. Expanses of mud where homes used to stand. Cars literally piled one on top of the other by the force of the tsunami. They are images almost too difficult to view. And I'd like to caution all of us that while we need to be informed, viewing such images hour after hour and day after day can be detrimental to your health. We can actually develop a secondary post-traumatic stress disorder from viewing too much horror. We see it all the time. We see it in the rescue workers who went to Haiti after that earthquake. We see it in workers who work with people who have been profoundly abused. We see it in workers and therapists and others who work with trauma survivors. It's possible for us to be traumatized by experiencing images and stories and video footage of traumatic events that impacted other people. It's important during this period that we all engage in a time of self-care, that we turn off the television, that we check in once in a while to know what's happening, and then step away from it. Do self-care activities. If you're a meditator or even if you're not, take it up. Spend extra time in meditation during these days. Spend extra time in prayer and contemplative prayer. Go for a walk. Go for a walk daily. Take a trip to the local mall. Do some window shopping. Listen to your backlog of Christ and Like podcasts. Do something to take your mind off the situation. As human beings, there's only so much we can bear. And practice compassion toward those directly affected by this disaster. Send your thoughts and prayers to the people of Japan and to the rescue workers from around the world who will certainly be arriving, some of whom have arrived already. They need your positive energy, and you need to give it, both to them and to yourself, through self-care activities. Let us commit to work together for a world in which our care for one another, our recognition of the interconnectedness of all humanity, of all living beings, of all of the created order, is foremost and forefront in our minds, not just in the aftermath of disaster, but every day of our lives. For that truth is enduring. That truth is as real as the chair you are sitting on at this moment. That truth endures, and it is only through recognizing this truth that we can hope to work together, to become one world, a world without violence, a world of peace, where love is the calling of the day. Won't you join me in that? I'm Bishop Craig Bergland. I thank you for joining me in this video blog. I wish you God's rich blessings. Namaste.